it is good to have you back here at the project. If you're new, my name is Thomas, and you came to one of the most anticipated series we do all year round. I feel like if I just said the word sex every Sunday, that's all you would need. And so we say it a lot. We asked a question. The question was this: what do you look for? Or what traits do you look for in a significant other? And we actually like hundreds of responses. Some of them are confidence and secure in themselves. That sounds really good. Not a D-bag. That sounds really good as well. A very large heart. I don't know if you mean that biologically or... There's another one, very big, large heart. They're like side by side. Sense of humor. Their own identity, which is good. You don't want them to have anyone else's identity. They would be a criminal. No big trucks. Has all the tattoos. I don't know which ones, but you have all of them. A good set of kidneys. You know what? I'll be honest with you, that is smart. That's forward thinking. That's like, listen, I need a bag of organs to follow me around, just in case mine fail. Slow to get angry, loyal, honesty, relaxed, independence, loves family, Western gentleman. You sound like my people who need a green card. Nice teeth. That's awesome. Stability. Someone said not Josh. And so... Because we all know you can't trust those Joshes. I want to share a really, really interesting research study with you. It says this: studies have shown that when romantic partners who are intensely in love are exposed to photographs of their beloved, the brain regions that become activated are the same regions that are activated in cocaine addicts when they are craving cocaine. Healthy love is likely to involve other qualities as well, like respect, trust, commitment, qualities that keep a relationship strong even though feelings may ebb and flow. Addictive love, by contrast, tends to be more singularly focused on attaining those highs, whatever the cost. When you fall in love, you become an idiot. That's basically what it's saying. You could be in a relationship that sucks and not even know it. How many of you had friends or family members, because it's never you, who have been in a relationship with someone and you're like, what? Right? Like, how did that happen? They said they wanted someone with all the tattoos and they have none of the tattoos, right? Like, are they blinded? Yes. They might as well snort cocaine, right? Like, and we know it's so hard because honestly, we are meant for relationship. We want something, we want to connect, and it is a good thing. And this is why we talk about this stuff, because we think sex is good. We think it's great. We think that, being horny is a normal thing. And we think that there are definitely dysfunctions that need to talk about it because we think it steals from what God intended for you. We have to talk about it. So we do these series like this one called Title Your Sex Tape, because we really, really want to get at a point of helping you figure out, how do I just do this well and make sure that I don't live with tons of regret because I wish someone would have told me differently. And that's what it's about. Last week, we talked about, it was called Hand Solo. And we talked about being a healthy person. If you didn't catch it, it's on YouTube, it's on our podcast. Make sure you check it out. And we said sex is easy, but intimacy is hard. And what everyone longs for is intimacy. Is to be known, is to be safe, is to be valued, it's to be desired. Everyone wants intimacy. Sex is easy. And tonight, the idea is this, is staying is easy. Staying sometimes is so easy because it's normal. It's what we know. It's what is like, even if you're in a relationship that's maybe really unhealthy, sometimes it's actually easier to stay because you can't think of how hard it's going to be to get out. I think there's a lot of people that stay in relationships because it's just all they know. It's what they do. We've been together since we were like in high school. We've been together since junior high. We've been together since last week. It's just so much time has passed, right? Like, and staying is easy. And what I want to get at is this, but cooperation is hard. That doesn't sound sexy, I know. Will you cooperate with me, right? I get it. But if you're thinking cooperation, a relationship is something where both of you choose, hey, listen, I understand who you are. I understand your value. I understand you are a human being. I understand you got needs and wants, and I am the same thing, and we need to cooperate to make this thing happen in a safe, good way. There's this, so we use the Bible here at the project because we just think that the Bible is not only one of the best, most valuable texts for helping us figure out life well, but we believe it's important because that's how Jesus speaks to us. And there is this verse in the second part of the Bible called the New Testament, this book called Ephesians. And the guy, his name is Paul, and he writes, and he says this about just married couples. Before he gets into anything, he says this, and further, submit to one another out of reverence of Christ. There is this cooperation. There's this idea of, I lay my life down for you, you lay your life down for me. How do we cooperate to make this well? And it says, out of reverence for Christ. What does that mean? Last week I shared about the basis of any relationship comes down to three things that we see just even at the beginning of the Bible in this book called Genesis. And it starts with these three things. One is that every single one of you are created with care. Genesis 1:27 says, God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. 3 times it's saying, I want to remind you, I created you with value, with dignity, with worth. I created you with love, and I created you with very specific attention. You were created intentionally. All of you have a high amount of value and dignity, and so you should see yourself as such, and you should treat others as such. The second thing is that we are actually created with longing. Right in the beginning, it says, and the Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper who's just right for him. Now, I got to explain that word helper is not someone who's going to do everything for you, because some of you guys treat your girlfriends like they're your moms. What it's saying is this. It's saying, I'm going to create someone who cooperates with you, where you do life together. You help them, they help you. It is someone who we can go through life together, and we cooperate with each other's image. We cooperate with each other's needs and wants. Someone to do life with. We're created with that need, every single one of you. Some people ask me, it's like, how do I just not be horny anymore? And I'm like, do you really want that? Like, do you really not want to have a sex drive, you weirdo, right? Like, it's not, some of you maybe need to taper it down, but like we are created to be with each other. The third thing is this, is that we are created with responsibility. It says, then God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply. You're like, oh yeah, and fill the earth and govern it. Reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground. Some of you are thinking Disney princess right there, where all the birds come down, you're just like, oh. Anyways, and what it's basically saying is that we are created with the responsibility to take care of each other, take care of our relationship with God, and take care of creation, is that we are actually meant to have relationships that help other people's relationships become healthier. You're meant to live a life that benefits the life of another person. And I think this is one of the biggest lost aspects of our day today, is that so many of us are so us-focused, you don't recognize that God has placed responsibility, and every single one of you calls yourself a Christian. Even if you don't call yourself a Christian, you should hold this responsibility. Is that your life is meant to be lived in a way that the person coming under you or behind you or watches you has a better life because of yours. What if we lived and had relationships that actually challenged other people to have better relationships as well? How great would that be? So this is the premise of what this whole series is coming out of, that we were created with care, we were created with longing, and we were created with responsibility. And to be honest, there are things in any relationship that are going to be held in tension. There's never a relationship that's not going to have some sort of tension in it. That's pretty normal. I mean, honestly, a good relationship is not about having everything figured out, having every disagreement agreed upon. If you want that, date yourself. And according to masturbation statistics, a lot of you do that. But there are a number of yellow flags in relationships that I think we need to know about. Things that if we're not careful about it, they may not only damage your relationships, they could actually damage you. And what I want to do tonight is I want to help you notice what could be yellow flags in your relationship, what could be red flags, what are things you need to pay attention to. Listen, things may be hot in the sheets, but you may be living regret on the streets. And I want to make sure that you're able to identify these things before it goes way too far, before you get in too deep, because relationships, all of them are really risky. You can't be in a relationship without risk. But there's some things we can do to learn to pay attention to that we can limit the risk. That we can limit unnecessary pain, unnecessary hurt, disappointments, or regret. There's another book in the Bible called Proverbs, and basically it's just like, if you were to take some of the smartest person in the world and he just wrote things that you're just like, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. That's the book of Proverbs. And it says this: there is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way to death. And oftentimes, sometimes even in relationships, we think it's so right, but we don't understand it's actually leading us to our own death. And I want to make sure that we ask the right questions. And so if you wouldn't mind, what I want to do tonight is actually force you to ask some good questions. And you're like, I'm not in a relationship. Thanks for bringing it up, you jerk. I'll say this. If you're so angry, use that anger, remember these questions, and ask one of your friends who are in a relationship. Turn it on them. It's good. I would say this: a good friend is able to ask really good questions. And so if you're not in a relationship, maybe tuck them away for yourself when you do get into that relationship, to ask yourself these questions, or to ask friends around you that you really care and value. If you are in a relationship, I'm going to tell you right now, you don't know everything, you do get things wrong, and you don't notice everything. So just ask the questions, okay? If you disagree with me on anything, you can email me at amanda.d@hopecity.ca, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. First question, I want to deal with it right off the bat because it is a main question we get, especially when you're coming to a church like this. There's a lot of Christians, and you hear things like, can Christians date non-Christians, all that jazz. And the first question I want to address is this question: what about your faith and values? So 2 Corinthians 6:14, it's a verse that a lot of Christians use for this, and it says, don't team up with those who are unbelievers. How can righteousness be partnered with wickedness? How can light live with darkness? And it goes on, and actually is very contrasting. And you read it, and if you're not a Christian, you're like, that's super offensive. I am not wicked. What Paul is trying to get at here, the writer of this, he's trying to give you a sense of clarity. And as much as the words are really strong, he's not saying that you are a wicked person if you're not a Christian. He's trying to give a contrast here. And I like it because let me draw it away from just being Christian or non-Christian. Let me say, what if you're just two different religions? That's where they want to get at. Because of this, values touch virtually everything in your life. What you value, what you hold deep, and what you cherish creates the biggest opportunity for fulfillment or for compromise, chaos, or a chasm to grow between you and another person. And if you don't share the same values, which often derive from the faith that we have, you may not know it right now, you may not feel it, you may not notice it right now, but I guarantee you it will force you to ask very hard questions down the road that you may think, why did it come this far? And I'll say this: if you are of a certain faith tradition or not, and you get into a relationship with someone in a different faith tradition or no faith tradition, and you're wondering why there's problems, I'm just going to tell you right now, that's kind of your problem. And as much as I want to help you work through these things, you need to know that everything about your relationship, especially when it comes to conflict, always comes down to values. Now, can a Christian and a non-Christian share the same values? Totally. Of course they can, right? I've met a lot of Christians who are terrible human beings. And I've met a lot of non-Christians who are wonderful human beings. And so all I'm trying to say is this conversation of faith and values is absolutely necessary. Absolutely necessary. I'll tell you why. Because this isn't just about a car make preference. I'm a Dodge man. She's a Toyota girl. She's smarter, by the way. But you can work through that. That's fine. Get a Honda. It's like right in the middle, right? Or a Kia, right? It's just like the most domesticated import vehicle you can get, right? Like it's just, that's fine. You can get over it. The problem is this, though, when it comes to like your faith and values, you're going to be asking questions like, well, how are we going to raise our kids? What if I want to bring them to church? What if I don't want to bring them to church? Are they going to be raised to be baptized or not? Can I teach them the certain values I have or not? Dude, that's a huge issue. And you're like, I'm not even thinking of kids. I know, that's why I'm bringing it up, because we don't think. Me, myself included. You're thinking of not being able to share sometimes the most important thing in your life with the person that is expected to be the most important person in your life. It causes a sort of double life, and I see this over and over again. I have something that's so valuable to me that I cannot share with someone, and the other person's like, there's something so valuable to me or to them, and we can't share that. There's a bit of a chasm there. What about someone to pray with you? I mean, prayer is a very intimate practice for Christians, for anyone of any faith. And I always say that in a relationship, you want to expose every part of your being to this other person and have them do the same thing and cooperate together. But in some of the most intimate pieces of your relationship, can you actually do that? Or is that always going to be something you do separately? You may be okay with that right now, but I guarantee you at a certain point you won't be okay with it. Your friends groups, dealing with losses and circumstances, your finances when it comes to tithing and things like that. Are we comfortable with that? The Bible calls this, don't be unevenly yoked. A concept is like two animals and they have a yoke, but one animal's bigger than the other. And it actually creates a curve in the line and it never goes straight. It's always being directed somewhere else. And I want to say this. Dragging someone and telling them, listen, I wish you were this, is basically saying to someone, you're not good enough yet. And that is unfair. And I think that creates a lot of chaos in a relationship. Everything's really good except I just wish there was this. And there's always going to be that sense where it becomes an untouchable conversation. Or even just the idea of like, what if I just, and I always say this, it's always either going to lead to chaos or it's going to lead to some sort of compromise. And one of you are going to have to compromise. And one of you are going to have to compromise a very important belief or value that you have in order to accommodate another person. You're asking someone to violate those values. That's unfair. And often what happens is someone's going to have to compromise. And I will tell you this, you will compromise. One of you will compromise. Or you'll just have to give in. And there's going to be this chasm. In this part of my life, I'll live my way. In that part of life, you'll live that way, and that's it. And some of you maybe are like, I've decided that's okay. That's the way we're going to go. And that's up to you. I'm just saying, when it comes to your values and or faith system, if they are very different, I'm telling you, it is going to create either a compromise, a chaos, or it's going to create a chasm. And you have to think about this stuff. It's too important. See, we always think that it'll be fine until you're not fine. And you're too deep into it. So, can I ask you, maybe you're in this situation right now. Can I just give you a really good question for you to ask the next time you meet and talk? Is this. Where would this or where could this become a real issue for us down the road? Maybe it is just when you get married. Maybe it is when you have kids. Maybe it is when you go to church and they don't want to go with you. Or when could this actually become an issue for us? And talk about it. Bring that up so it starts a conversation. You can have a conversation about those values and that faith, where it's going to be, and you need to make those decisions. How are we going to navigate this? Can we navigate this? Do we get help doing this? But I'm telling you right now, your life and your relationship is going to be made up by being able to share the values that you have. And faith is just too big of a thing to just let it on the wayside. It's just way too big. And so have that conversation. Have that internal conversation and have that conversation with your significant other if there is a bit of a difference there. If you're recognizing that there's compromise, chaos, or there's a chasm between you two, have that conversation. It may not be an issue now, but I guarantee you it'll be an issue later. You know how I know? Because I have many of these conversations with young adults. Many of these conversations with people as they go older in the relationships. It's just too big of a deal. That was the first question. Second question is this. Do you actually want the same things? Maybe they want something more, maybe you don't. Like we said last week, maybe you're okay with just like hanging out with your buddies or not really taking life too seriously at this point. You're still figuring stuff out. The other person's like, I want to get married. And you're like, I can't even spell married, right? Like you just don't want to go there. That's not you. Have that critical conversation. Do you actually want the same thing? The other thing too is like, let's say someone's like, I want to be a world traveler. And you're like, I never want to leave my city. That's a problem. It sounds cute now. Oh, it's fine, you go. I'll hold down the fort. Yeah, until you're at home, or one of you are just like, I have to constantly give up my dreams or my feelings for this person constantly. Because your lives don't really match up. What you want out of life doesn't match up. And I'm not saying that you can't find a way to cooperate and mutually agree to some sort of thing, but if what you want is vastly different than the other person, it's only going to create more issues going forward. You can't force something that's not there. And so if someone doesn't want to be something, doesn't want to do, you can't force that to make it happen. And you're like, well, I'll show you, right? Like, just give me 10 minutes in a room alone with this person. And where your life is going, maybe it's when you care more about their issues than they care about their issues. This is a huge one, and I'm sorry to say, mostly for women. There's this ride or die mentality. Your partner has lots of issues, and you're like, I should stick with them. I'm the person that's going to help them. You're like, should I stay with them because I love them so much, because we share so much? I need to let you know, love is not built on guilt. A healthy, functional relationship cannot work out of guilt. If you care more about their issues than they care, that is a problem. They are unhealthy. And you may actually be the thing that's keeping them from finding health. But not just that, it could make you a lot more unhealthy. It can be such a detriment on your own soul, on your own mind. And I'm not saying just like, you got a problem, I'm out. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you notice some significant issues and they don't care about those things and they're making terrible decisions and you care more about it than they do, listen, you want different things and you're on a different place, and it may be best for you to just kind of think, maybe you got to hold the pause button or the eject button out of here. And I'd say you're not married, so don't act like it. If you break up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, you're not getting a divorce, you're breaking up because it didn't work. That's pretty normal. You've learned something there. Maybe there's space is best for you. Maybe there's a lot of mental health issues. And yeah, we want to be able to support them. But if your relationship is causing tension and stress and is only adding to the noise for someone, maybe it's best to go, hey, how can we just dial back the seriousness of this and just make sure that you're getting healthy? Because like I said last week, you don't have a healthy relationship. Two healthy people make a healthy relationship. You can't just demand health. You need to actively pursue it in your own life. And so does the other person. If the other person doesn't care for it, then you're on two different wavelengths here. And that can be super damaging. That, to me, is a huge yellow flag. You got to be asking yourself a question, do we want the same things? Let's move on. Is there much substance beyond the physical? Song of Songs. If you ever want to read a book in the Bible that you feel like should not be in the Bible, read Song of Songs. Not much here, but just, anyways. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. The concept of this is going, and like I said before, sex is the easiest form of intimacy anyone can create. Sex is easy. But it also can be a huge cloud of judgments over your judgment. It has the ability, like we already read, research has shown over and over and over again, that can actually make you feel like something's better than it actually is. A quick pickup to the relationship because it got physical really fast, it can be a powerful blinder to the emptiness of your actual relationship. A huge blinder to it. I would say this, whatever starts hot and heavy is going to end hot and heavy. And you realize we don't have much substance. There's not much we talk about. Intimacy is a very wide and varying plane built over a long period of time. Sexual or physical intimacy is a powerful stimulant that can actually numb every other need you may have. And I think there's a lot of people who are in relationships that are very physical, and I don't think maybe some of you want it to be that physical, but it's just like, it's kind of what's normal, and I know he or she really likes it, and it's kind of where we're at, but it's like, is there much substance beyond it? If you were to take away the physical aspect of your relationship, what actually would be left? Good question to ask yourself. What would be left? Is it healthy? Do you have great conversations? Are you listening to each other? Do you feel heard? Do you feel valued? Do you know what you guys want to do in your life? Do you celebrate the things that you love? And you know, are you celebrating what you want to do and where you want to go in life? Are you having those conversations? Beyond the physical aspect of the relationship, what would be left? Just a question to ask yourself. Okay, next. Are you in it because there's nothing better? Subsequent question is, let's find out how selfish you actually can be. You know, if you're bored, don't use someone else to quell your boredom. If you're in a relationship because you're like, listen, I think this is all I could do. And you're just like, I just want to get into a relationship because there's no options. It's just not worth it. And you're hurting someone in the long run. And you're hurting yourself. It's not a really good reason to be in a relationship. Next question. Is it because you need it? There is a difference between needing a relationship and wanting one. And where you want to be is on the wanting one. We've identified, I've got some insecurity issues, things like that, but I don't need a relationship. I'm okay with who I am. I love where I'm going. I've got an idea of where I want to go in my life, a bit of a career option, and I just I've got good friends, I've got good people, and I just really want to be in a relationship with someone versus someone who's like, I need it. I am alone if I don't have a relationship. I don't feel loved. I don't feel secure. And I need to say this. Relationships, especially as you progress into more seriousness like marriage, only amplifies your issues. I shared a stat last week. It says that they followed for a number of years married couples before they were married and after they were married. And they say that the happiness of a married couple versus when they weren't married didn't change at all. Aside from a blip in the radar when they kind of get married and have a honeymoon and things like that, if they were not happy before, marriage did not make them happy after. If they were happy before, then they were happy people after. But here's the thing, if you are lonely, marriage actually is a really, really good place to feel that much more lonely. It will not quell the deep issues you have in your life. If you need a relationship, you may not be the right person for a relationship. Next question. Did God tell you? Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. This is one of the worst things I have ever heard. God told me to marry you. No, he didn't. Your boner may have pointed towards her, but God did not tell you. The reason why I bring this up, because I honestly feel like this actually, welcome to the project. My name's Tomas. I am a pastor. This can actually be more oppressive than good. Do you know how much pressure that puts on someone? Well, if they heard from God and I didn't, maybe I'm in the wrong. Maybe I am his or her one, which is a total myth, by the way. It can put such unrealistic expectations on someone. No, I'm not saying that God doesn't speak into these things. I'm not saying that it's wise to just go, God, is this healthy? And you're asking, but God's not going to be like, you shall marry them, right? Like that. When you see God leading throughout Scripture, it's to fulfill his purposes, not yours. And I think what happens in these relationships, especially if they're Christians, Bible college students, and they have these things, it removes. We get a lot of people these months, and a lot of people never come back after these months. I think what happens too is a lot of people, it's like, I feel like God put us together. We need to get married. We need to do this. And what you do is you actually skip what I call the mundane part of dating. And you just move from like, we're dating, this is exciting, and it's like, oh man, let's talk about getting engaged. You talk about engagement, you get a ring, you set a date, you do premarital, you get married, and then you get into life and you realize the minute you get married, how boring life gets. And you skip the whole idea of, can we just do life in the mundane together? Can we do the boring together? Can we just exist together? Can we even be friends? And it pushes so much. And a lot of our relationships, not just these kinds of relationships, but a lot of relationships are like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? Stop. Don't rush. Because the minute you get married is the minute you realize how boring life is and how slow it goes. And if you cannot do life with someone in the mundane, in the boring parts, and trust them in that and be friends with them in that, marriage is going to be as tough as hell. And I'm really, I'm honest because I hear it a lot. Don't use it. If you really did feel like God told you to marry someone, there are different ways of doing it. I tell people, put it on what I call the shelf. Let God handle it. Let him do it. Listen, God is God. He'll get what he wants. He's not like hoping just follow, right? Like, I hope you talk to her, right? Like, it's not. But I want to do something too. How do we actually hear God's voice? And I'll say this, you may hear God's voice in the privacy of your own prayer time, but God's voice is actually always discovered through wisdom and time and other voices. And some of you may have had a really great experience with God. Give it time. Because if it's God's voice, it will be timeless and it will show itself through wisdom and other voices. Keep it to yourself. Don't tell someone. Tell me so I could tell you. Don't be an idiot. Hold on to it, right? Like if you did, do it, but don't tell someone else, hey, God told me to marry you. Okay, I'll move on. Next question. What do your friends and parents say? Plans go wrong for lack of advice. Many advisors bring success. My parents are dumb. They don't know anything. Parents and friends typically do know you better than you think. If your parents, and you got a fairly healthy relationship with your parents, if a lot of your closest friends are like, I think you're making a mistake, 90% of the time, you're probably making a mistake. I'm not saying just like end it that moment, but heed their advice. Think through it. What does it mean for you? Why are they so concerned? Are their concerns legitimate? Are they illegitimate concerns? Do I need to give it some time? And actually next week, we're going to be talking about the idea of like, how do we just date well and date safe? And friendship is a huge aspect of that. Is there something you just can't put your finger on? A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. Have you ever been with someone you're just like, there's something off about you? I can't put my finger on it. Have you been in a relationship with someone like that? Do you feel like in your relationship there's something off? Here's some signs. You feel like they get angry extremely fast. They lack a bit of integrity. Or they just like, man, they're always showing up to work late. They're really critical and judgmental. They are never really applying themselves to much. I feel worse after being with them. Someone felt that one. I feel like I'm being manipulated. I feel like they're telling me something to get me to do something or to feel something, but it doesn't seem like that's what they're actually delivering. I feel manipulated. their friends, they like kind of suck. I would never want to hang out with their friends. I don't want to become like those people. Friends will tell you a lot about someone, by the way. How do they respond to you when you challenge them? When you call them out on things? Do they get super angry? Do they get aggressive? Do they begin lying to you? Do they tell you it's none of your business? Well, then you know what kind of intimacy you can create with that person at that point. They don't seem to be able to talk about stuff that they're wrestling with. They don't talk to you about anything really at depth. They're unsure of who they are. I don't really know what I want to be. And that's okay. That's fine. They have their own progress. But there's something just off about that. And you're like, maybe I'm further along than they are. Okay, here's a huge one. What does their social media look like? If your boyfriend has a ton of girls in bikinis on their Instagram account, I guarantee you they're probably watching porn. And more than that, they will constantly make you feel insecure about the people that are on Instagram because they are comparing you. And I know some guys whispering in your ear right now, it's not true. Is there something that you just can't put your finger on? If your girlfriend is following certain accounts that make you feel really uncomfortable, you feel like, man, it's creating a lot of insecurity in me, or I can see it's creating a lot of insecurity in them, you got to watch for that. If you find your significant other is all about posting about themselves the whole time, guess what your relationship's going to be about? Them the whole time. And be like, well, that's the thing to do. No, it's actually not. You just think it is. Social media has this really beautiful way of turning narcissists into psychological narcissists. And if you're always on your phones and never dating each other, that's a problem. What's the antidote? What's the antidote to that? How do I navigate that? What if they have some of these things, right? That's not always bad, and I get that. Ask yourself this question. Do they have a history of change? Have they ever been challenged in their life at a point where they actually had to make adjustments in their life and they made those adjustments and they followed through on it? If they say they're going to change but never change over and 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 over again, I mean, everyone requires grace. I require grace. There's something Catherine asked me to do, and I say I'll do it, and I never do it. And that's something. And she'll call me out, be like, you know what, I've asked you like 3 times, you haven't done it. And I'm like, I'm a terrible human being, I'm sorry. But she trusts that my intention is not to just, brush her off. Do the people have a history of change or transformation? Do they have a soft heart to hear challenges from the right people, if not you? Are there mentors in their life, or people who be like, you're not being smart or wise here. You could actually be hurting feelings. You could be hurting yourself. Do they have a history of responding to that and actually making adjustments? I feel like if you find someone who's able to make adjustments and change in their life, you can almost make anything work. But if they're like ego-driven, and they refuse to change, you have a good glimpse of what your future can look like with them. Here's a really important question. All you can know is what you know right now about the person you're with. If the rest of your life looked like it did now, would you be happy? Next question. Are you having to be someone else? Song of Songs. You are beautiful, my darling. Beautiful beyond words. Your eyes are like doves behind your veil. Oh. Your hair falls in waves like a flock of goats winding down the slopes of Gilead. Man, I love those slopes. I love this. Your teeth are as white as sheep, recently shorn and freshly washed. I guess back then they didn't really have toothbrushes, so that would work. Your smile is flawless. See, someone who said, I want someone with straight teeth, they were just being biblical. Each tooth matched with its twin. And a reason why I bring this up is because, like, you read this story and this guy's infatuated with this girl. It's like, I'm making it about you. I don't want you to change. I love who you are. I want to bend my life towards you for who you are, not who I'm trying to make you to be. And I know in every relationship, there has to be a sense of growing up to it. I had to grow up. When I got married to Catherine, I had to grow up. I had to grow up because my emotional IQ wasn't where she was at. And so I needed to grow my emotional IQ. I need to learn how to share things. But if you feel like you have to compromise in your character or change your character, if you've got to compromise your boundaries and they're constantly pushing your physical, your emotional, your spiritual boundaries, your sexual boundaries, that is a person not worth entrusting your life with. If they are making you change your friends, unless they're total knobs, if they're making you compromise your values, they make you feel like you're always inferior and you need to measure up to them, feel like you wouldn't be their friend. That's a problem. And anytime you bend who you are and your values to fit someone else's agenda, you're lying to them. And it's unhealthy, it's not good, and they should have no right to push it. And if you're here and you're pushing someone's boundaries, whether it's physical, sexual, emotional, or spiritual, that is a form of abuse, by the way. And if you don't have consent, I don't care what situation you're in the wrong, not them. So get your crap together, figure it out, leave the relationship, and don't go in another one until you get healthy. Sorry, I don't know where that came from. But then the question arises, because we all make mistakes. I mean, dating is a process of figuring out who you are and what to do and what not to do and all that jazz. But you're asking, why do we keep bird boxing this? Why do we keep blindfolded going into these dumb situations? Like help me. Can someone just chain me to the wall until you find me the right person, right? Why do we do this? Women tend to overgive to people who don't give as much back, statistically. Also, by the end of young adulthood, around 25 to 28, over 50% report perpetrating or being a victim of some form of relational abuse. Nearly 1 in 5 felt unwanted sexual pressure at some point within their romantic relationship. Why do we continue doing this? Why don't we stop? There's a number of reasons. There's a couple. One is what's called the sunken cost fallacy. Sunken cost fallacy is this idea, and it's an economic thing, but it's relationships too. You feel like you've invested too much time and resources into it, it would cost you too much to get out. It's called sunken cost fallacy for a reason. A little bit of pain can save you from a future of regret. It doesn't matter how much you sunk into it now. If it is unhealthy, step out. But that's one of the reasons why. Another reason too is the fear of missing out. If I don't have this one, am I going to find someone else? And I'm telling you, you will. You will find someone else. Some people it's because it's what you know. You have family dysfunction. You grew up in it. And so dysfunction is how you function. Own that. Own that dysfunction. That's okay. Someone is pressuring you. No one's telling you any differently. You hear things like this: if you leave me, I'll hurt myself. I can't live without you, but God told me. These are actually manipulative statements. And as much as someone feels those things, that is an unhealthy reason to stay. But because we're humans, and we want things to work, and we want the best for other people, we allow those things to keep us there. And I'm telling you, those are not reasons to stay. In fact, you can be more detrimental not just to your health, but to their own health as well. That can't be the reason why you stay. You may be insecure. You may have a hard time asserting yourself. Find a safe person to talk to. Be honest with them. And ask for help to get out. So how do we repair, though? I'm coming to an end here. I know I'm keeping you a bit. How do we repair? What are things we can do? Well, if you are being abused in any sense of the form, there is no way to repair it. My encouragement for you is there are a lot of really good helplines that you need to phone. Find a trusted friend. Get out as quick as you possibly can. I know it's hard. I know it's so hard. But you are worth it. You're made in God's image, and you're worth being treated like that. Get out. If you are in a place where just like you've realized there's some yellow flags in our relationships, I'm not just telling you all the time to just hit the eject button. What can you do? Address the issue as honestly as possible. Maybe it's time for you to have what I call a 911 conversation. Listen, if you don't make this adjustment, things have got to change here. And maybe it just needs that. Listen, this is what you're doing. I'm not okay with it. We got to make an adjustment. We got to talk through it. Have that conversation. Stop texting about it and snapping about it. No one else needs to know. Get a journal if you really feel like you need to say something. Texting should only be a bridge to face-to-face conversation with your significant other. Don't deal with it all on text. It's a really bad way of dealing with emotional stuff. Humility and own your issues, own your transgressions, get professional help, take a step back, reassess the whys. Sometimes what's a big deal to us isn't actually a really big deal. So assess that. But find some help. Every good relationship knows that they can't do it on their own. Find help. I want to address one last thing very quickly. I know that when we talk about this, some people feel like I have a lot of shame and guilt. I've made a lot of issues. I'm in the middle of one now. I did it to myself, or you feel like you did it to yourself, and you're like, what do I do? This can bring up a lot of shame for people, and it's never my intention to do that, but I wanted to talk to you about something. Jesus, in this book called Matthew, it's one of the witness accounts of Jesus' life and words. There's this moment where he's going to heal someone. And this happens. As Jesus was saying this, a leader of a synagogue came and knelt before him. My daughter has just died, he said, but you can bring her back to life again if you just come and lay your hands on her. So Jesus' disciples got up and went with him. Just then, a woman who had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding came up behind him. Now you understand, at this point, constant bleeding for a woman in Mosaic law meant that she was unclean. She should feel a sense of, I can't be here. I don't belong here. I don't fit here. Like some of us feel sometimes. I did something wrong, the shame. I can't help it. And it's funny, when she was walking through the crowd, she was touching all these religious people and making them all dirty, by the way. And sometimes you in church are like, I hear it sometimes, is God going to strike me with lightning? You know, like if I come to church and you feel shame and you feel it, and she would have felt the same way. But so she says, a woman who had suffered for 12 years of constant bleeding came up behind him. She touched the fringe of his robe, for she thought, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. Something very important happened at that moment. It says this: Jesus turned around. He was on his way to do something, and someone who felt ashamed and felt guilty thought to themselves, if I could just get to Jesus, if I can just do it, something can be okay. And it says that Jesus felt something and he turned around towards this woman. Now, how would you feel? You're in church and I'm telling you that Jesus is in this place and you're like, oh my goodness, I don't know how I can repair this. I don't know how I can go back to it. And it says Jesus turned around, and I love the next line. It says this: and when he saw her, he said, daughter. My child, the one in whom I made fearfully, wonderfully. Be encouraged. Your faith has made you well. Jesus did not restore something she lost. Jesus reminded her what she forgot about. You are made in the image of God. 3 times it says he created you. In this book called Psalms, it says he made you wonderfully and fearfully. In the book of Ephesians, it says you are his masterpiece. And we make mistakes. We go through life and we feel like, how can I ever measure up again? And it's when you come to a place, when you go to Jesus, he reminds you, haven't you forgotten Have you forgotten? You're my son, my daughter. Be encouraged. Whatever you're looking for, I've given to you. And the encouragement for us is this: no matter where you come and how you came here tonight, never defines how you need to walk out of here. And I want to encourage you, if you are in a place of feeling guilt and shame, that wasn't my intention. My intention was this: know these things because you are a daughter and a son of God. And he's not holding it against you. So stop holding it against yourself. And would you remember, God loves you wholly and fully, and nothing will change that. Maybe here tonight you heard a lot about Jesus. We feel like you can belong here without even believing everything we believe. Walking with Jesus means watching him, hearing him, listening, figuring things out. And we say the best way to do that is just start by texting next to 505-888. We send you just this ebook for you to just start a conversation, what it looks like to walk with Jesus. And if that's you, I'll just encourage you to text it. But can I just pray for you really quickly tonight before I let you go? Jesus, thank you that you walk with us, you help us, and you put people in our life to help us do this. Help us. Walk with us. Give us wisdom. You say in the Bible, if we lack wisdom, to ask for it and you'll give it. So God, we pray for wisdom. Help us navigate these really hard conversations we need to have with ourselves and with others. God, I pray that you help us to be the kind of people who know that we're made in your image. We are created with longing, but created with a responsibility to live and relate in a way that helps other people live and relate in healthier ways too. Amen. Guys, I know I kept you longer. I hope this is super helpful. I'm trying to give you everything I can. Next week, we're going to continue our series titled Your Sex Tape called Menage a Trois. And looking forward to helping you figure out what does it look like to actually date healthy and date well. Thanks, guys. Have a great week. Love you guys.